Here it is, favorite time of the week, Wednesday, 11 a.m. Pacific. You're out there, I'm in here, and I know some of you were sitting there going, oh my God, today I'm going to go on, I'm going to watch Avital Spivak, I think I got that right, talk about tech and how to change things and make it easier for Luddites like you and me on how to use tech to grow your business. But unfortunately, she couldn't control the AI that controls her voice, and she's got a sore throat today and didn't quite make it. And I was going, okay, so I'm going to have to do it myself. But no, how do you replace somebody who's an expert in tech? You bring an NSA Hall of Fame speaker who is actually having an event coming up here that all of you could use. And we're going to talk about using strategic humor in your workday to create the things that you want to create, whether it's sales, retention, everything that comes with it. It's one of the greatest things in the world. My good friend, here she comes to the stage with a colorful background. Karen Buxman is in the house. Hello, Karen.
Meant to be, Ray. Meant to be.
That's right. This was the fate that we were looking for.
That's right.
If you have any questions, if you're unsure about what to do with humor, how to use it, how to get the most out of it, you can come on in. You can join raylive.com, like it says there. Now, you were just in the green room back there, and there was so many people outside. It took you a little while to get in, and I know that's
had to
pretty typical these days.
My way there.
Yeah, and she didn't have that much time then, so there's still plenty of stuff left on their charcuterie board. The hot tub is just bubbling and hot. There's a nice freezer right next to it with some Dove bars. We got that little Mister spray going right there. So come on in. You can hang back there. You can come on with us and ask a question, but just join the event. If you're watching it later, put questions in the comments. I'll make sure Karen gets them. Tell us what you're doing. Tell us what's coming up, and then we'll dig into our favorite topic.
All right. Well, for starters, I am doing, I think it's the 4th or 5th time now, the 8-week masterclass called The Missing Piece, Strategic Humor. It's for leaders, it's for coaches, it's for people who listen for a living. And it's not really about listening skills so much, although you know, Ray, as I do, that listening skills are really important in humor because you are going to miss a lot of opportunities to find and see and experience the humor and then share it with others. But this is a variety of different sessions. We're going to cover things like, how do you use humor in conflict? How do you use it to build resilience? How do you integrate it into your storytelling and your presentations? There's a lot of really rich information in it.
It's a fabulous thing, and it's starting on May 22nd.
Yep.
I have been through this. I was on I was one of the beta testers for this thing. So I know what's in it, and I know how it can help and what it can do for you. So this is an exciting thing. I'll put up a website. I'll put it in the chat later on, so people can have a link to get right to that and sign up for Karen's course if they need be. But if you've got questions today and want to go for a little cheap fun and cheap thrills, come on with us today and ask your questions in here.
Let's find cheap fun and cheap thrills.
Well, cheap fun. That the name of your thing, The Missing Piece, what I think about that is I grew up with cats. And cats would present you with a present. And what they do is they'd go out and they'd kill a mouse or a rodent, and then the present would be on the front porch, on the step, right in front, the missing piece. I never knew what that piece was, but apparently there's a piece in a mouse that doesn't taste good. Or it tastes so good, they want to give it to you.
There you go. There you go.
Maybe that's part of the thing when you set out that Friskies buffet. That's one tray that's the highlight. That's like the dessert tray.
Right.
With it. So we got off on the track talking about
there you go. It didn't take long.
but that's one of the things that if you want to put yourself in a mind that sees the world a little differently, where you can see where something might be funny out of something that's more serious. People that are funny don't look at the logic of the idea. They look at the logic of the words. And the missing piece could mean so many different things. I chose to go down the sick route because I'm a little bit sick, but it could be the missing piece in the Middle East that isn't there. It could be the missing piece that you don't have that you need and you can get by signing up for Karen's course on May 22nd, which now you'll never forget because you go, what was the missing piece about? So if you're looking to end peace in the Middle East, sign up for it. If there's room, she'll take you. If you're looking for the missing piece in humor and in the workplace that you're not getting people to stay with you, you're not getting people to sell what you want. This is the human interaction that makes things happen. And I think I said that all in one breath.
I'm telling you, you've learned that circular breathing.
Yeah.
You made a point that I think is really an interesting one, Ray, because people will say to me, and I know they say this to you, funny things happen to you all the time and they don't happen to me. Or, you see things that, other people don't see. And that part's true because you and I have wired our brains to see funny. And there are humor opportunities out there constantly. But the folks today, so many people have wired their brain to see more crazy, more ugly, more stress. They're doom scrolling. Everything that's coming up in their phone is about climate change, political climate, weather and hurricanes and fires and Armageddon. And the more they show that to their brain, the more their brain is going to show that to them. So they're not having a lot of opportunities to see humor, but it's not because the humor isn't there.
Yeah.
It's because they're not looking for it. And even if it's in front of them, they won't see it because of the reticular activating system. It's filtering it out. It's saying, well, that's not what they want to see more of. They want to see more of doom and gloom and horror and all the craziness that's going on. So even if it's right in front of you, you're not seeing it.
Well, and here's, I think, one of the things. So I didn't really see things that I did for the longest time until this very wise woman gave me 3 words that I do for people. And she said, clarify, simplify, and amplify. And
who was that wise woman?
Karen, that was the one, Karen Buxman. And looking and just hearing what you were saying, and everybody knows about The Secret, right? Not everybody, but a lot of people know about The Secret, and you can manifest what you want, right? That's The Secret. If you look for it, and the way I always put it, and because I'm not a crunchy spiritual guy, but I get The Secret because it works for me. And when I think about things, it's like when I want a new car. What kind of car do you want? I want a red Toyota convertible. Well, guess what? Now you start seeing red Toyota convertibles everywhere. You're looking for it. You're looking for it.
Exactly.
And what I know is that since I understand how humor works, and one of the key things there was the guy that from Colorado that had a TED Talk that defined humor as a benign violation of a norm that surprises you.
Exactly.
Well, the key word in there is surprise. All those other ones fit and they make the definition work, but most humor is based somewhat on surprise. So if you are wired to think funny, you look at how can I surprise off of this moment? Where is the surprise in that moment? Because exaggeration is big, but this is that moment in The Secret. If you ask for it, you get it. If you look for it, it's there.
Right.
And it's always there. When I was in college, people said, man, you find more money than anybody else because I looked for it. I didn't look for it. So if it was sitting on the ground, that was a faster way to get it than me figuring out, I could always get the job, but you're in college. You don't, those aren't great paying jobs back then. So, that's, if you look for it, you'll see it. That's really what it is. But you just got to know what to look for. Start with surprise. Yeah. What's surprising? What variations of it? But most people look at the White House lawn because humor and tragedy, fine line in between, right? And so you have to figure out what bothers you to see a lot of humor, but you can't go into the really bother to let it get you down. You have to scrape the edge. So the White House lawn, it's not political, by the way. The White House lawn, people look, it's a perfect lawn. It looks beautiful. It's green. Well, that's the way most people see it. But the way a comedian would see it, they see each blade of grass, all the little weeds that are growing within that grass that are clipped off right at the level of where the grass is, all the bugs floating around. You really have to get down to the dirt and see what's bugging you, what's dirty about what you're looking at to find out what's funny. But most people just see a beautiful green lawn. It's perfect. No, it's not. There's always something wrong in there.
You know, it's Judy Carter, dear friend and colleague, and just uber smart. And of course, she wrote the Comedy Bible and the Comedy Bible workbook. But she says, you know, when you're looking at a situation, I'm going to get this close and not exact, but it's something like, what is funky, broken, sad, or weird about this situation? And those are the kinds of ways that you can funny up material, and which I think is wonderful. When I talk about the missing piece, a lot of times I'm working with, or most of the time, I'm working with people who aren't naturally funny.
Mhm.
And, you know, the three things that I hear people, it's like when I ask, what's holding you back? They say one of three things. They say, people won't take me seriously. What if I cross the line and offend somebody and I'm not funny? To which I answer, great, because you don't need to be funny. You need to see funny. And so it's a little bit of a different slant on this, because there's actually three purposes to humor. I identified these in my research over the last 35 years. And the one that everybody thinks of is entertainment. And how would you measure the success rate of entertainment? If you're up on a stage and you're doing some stand-up, how do you measure your success?
The laughter you hear.
The laughter. So we measure success in entertainment by laughter. And comedians, especially professional comedians, they actually measure it in LPMs, laughs per minute. And so that is the entertainment world. But I've identified two other purposes, which are influence and well-being.
Okay.
With influence, it's inspiration, motivation, education, it's persuasion, negotiation, leading, all of those kinds of things. So if you are in a persuasive conversation and you're using humor, how do you measure your success? Are you measuring your success by how much you get that other person to laugh? It's a different ballgame. No, we're measuring our success on whether or not we achieve our goal, or did we persuade them to do what we wanted them to do, or to achieve what they wanted to achieve. It's in the quantity and quality of relationships, but it's not about how often we make them laugh. And then the third purpose is well-being. You know, that's physiological, psychological, social, emotional, even spiritual. And we measure success when we're using humor, not by how much the other person laughs, but did we move them up on the spectrum of well-being, or at least hold ground? Did we help them diminish pain? Did we help them lower their stress levels and increase their cognitive capacity? These are the ways we measure. And so for the people who are going, oh, but I'm not funny, the cool thing is, as you really, I guess, massage that reticular activating system to see more humor, then the natural funny falls into place, which makes it authentic. Then you're not trying to be somebody you're not. You're not trying to do stand-up, but you do start collecting the funny anecdotes and stories and observations and things that you see, hear, and experience, which you can then leverage into your line of work, which I think is really powerful.
Well, and there's kind of another can of worms we can open on this, because I think
Worms.
a lot of times that worms. I think a lot of times people think they're not funny, and being funny and having a good sense of humor are two completely different things.
Definitely.
And
Definitely.
laughter in and of itself is not really a good measure of how funny you are, because we do things to sabotage it. And for example, Zoom sabotages laugh. How can you be a stand-up comedian on Zoom?
Ooh, it's painful.
And even when you're killing, all you could tell is this. That's a big laugh.
Yeah.
That's a big laugh on Zoom. You can't hear it, so there's no energy, there's no audience. And what people don't know is that creating that laughter, creating that benign surprise, it's a technique just like accounting. And it can be that clinical. And what you see if you use ChatGPT to try to be funny is they will put that clinical answer on the page, which you can read it and either laugh or not. But the critical mass for laughter is not one person. It's many more. And so we cannot judge ourselves by the amount of laughter we get. In business, you know what business humor is? A smile, a good feeling. And if you put that in, that's why you don't even have to be funny to utilize it. And here's the stat, which is to me is amazing. If Karen and I work together and I'm funnier than Karen, the rest of the work group will think that I do a better job than Karen, whether that's true or not. To a tune of about 84% will pick me as the better worker. Now, how you get really close to where I am is you try things that are viewed as lighthearted. So, for example, if you send an email that has a little cartoon, if we got our friends Lisa Rothstein's cartoon, because she has a book coming out called Draw Your Genius. How's that for a plug?
She is a genius. Let's plug Lisa Rothstein, because she's genius.
She's on here on the 28th, I believe, and she's got a book signing out over the weekend. Fantastic thing. So it's good to get a plug in here for her too.
Yay, Lisa.
Yeah, and so if you use her cartoons at the bottom of your email, you get almost as much credit as the guy who's standing there and can make anybody laugh at any time. And the only reason that you can't do that right now today is because you don't understand how it works. And it's not that you're not funny, you just understand how to unlock that. And here's the brutal truth of that. There's nobody on earth that got funny with their own stuff. They saw something else that was funny and they retold the story. They retold the joke. They retold the thing they saw that was funny. And then they learned from trial and error. They did it again and again and again, because once you get a laugh, it's a little bit addictive. And so you'll say, oh my God, that worked. Oh my God, these people. And I remember, oh my God, girls that would never talk to me are now talking to me because I just made them laugh.
So you bring up an interesting point. Because when you've
used that twice today, Karen. So I'm just going to put up, Ray Engen. Interesting. Karen Buxman.
Interesting. let's see. I must have there. Interesting point, Ray.
There you go.
I bring my own emojis.
Yeah, there you go.
So when we're applying humor, and that's my world, is the application of humor. It's one thing to know about it. You gotta, in my opinion, the real power isn't in the knowledge. The power is in the application of the knowledge. And so there's, a couple of ways you can enjoy humor. And one is by creating it and sharing it. The other is more passive. So there's active and there's passive. So it might be your enjoyment of other things. Also, you can be leveraging other people's humor. And to your point earlier, with the fact that people really admire and give status to people who not just use humor, but particularly those that initiate the humor. Because at a non-conscious level, what we're thinking is they have less to lose. They're holding more power, or they wouldn't be taking that risk. But I digress. But if you are with someone who is really funny and you call upon them, say you're the speaker, you're not a funny speaker, but there is the potential of funny people in your crowd asking a question that's going to evoke a funny answer. When somebody answers that humorously and gets a laugh, vicariously, you're getting credit for that too. The audience, again, non-conscious level, they're thinking Ray had to have a sense of humor, or he wouldn't have called upon that person, or he wouldn't have asked that question. So these are the ways in the master class that we look at these little nuances of ways to leverage humor and how to use it to your advantage.
And so there's so many different layers to this thing, and this is something that Karen will be like hashing out at her master class, The Missing Piece, which starts on May 22nd. And I will just put this up there right there. If you go to there, right there, KarenBuxman.com/humor and coaching, there's a link to sign up right there. So how's that for quickly being prepared?
I'm impressed, Ray. I'm impressed.
Thank you. And that's the thing. It's not how good you are at doing something, it's what it appears like. And people have made lots of money over the years being able to set other people up to look good in front of audiences. And you give them the power, but you lead them to the path in a way of such that they can't fail.
Right.
One of the things that one of our friends, David Horning, does is he does a lot of HR seminars. You know, he think like a comedian. He is an actual comedian, but he goes into HR seminars. There's an oxymoron right there.
Right.
A comedian in an HR seminar.
And plug David Horning. He's really a funny guy.
He is. And we're just plugging everybody else today.
I'm telling you.
But one of the things he does, he goes into this thing. So let's create the worst possible scenario here. What's the worst? And it goes to the audience. And the audience, you can sit down and try and write it. The audience always will come up with something worse than what you thought of.
And
then you just roll with it. You just use the yes and spirit of life and go from there. And it will be an incredible scenario. And the reason it works is that David Horning knows that when you create surprise and go over exaggerate, that's going to create laughs along the way, because that's how a comedian thinks.
Yeah.
So he puts the ball on the tee that even it gives you a club that has a head this big on it that you can't miss the ball, and just lets you knock it out of the park. And because he's the one on stage holding the microphone, he did nothing. He did lots to get you there.
Absolutely.
The key things, which I know you cover in the masterclass, the height of learning comes after the height of laughter. Because laughter, it's like shaking an Etch-a-Sketch in your brain.
Yeah.
It clears it of everything. You cannot hold two emotions at the same time.
Right.
So when your significant other is significantly angry, if you can get them to laugh, the anger is gone.
Yeah.
That works in the beginning. And they see through that trick.
Then eventually they see through it. You know, and the emotion is the piece that we want to really leverage here. And when I'm working with audiences, and so many times for instance, salespeople, they want to give you the data, and that's fine. That data is important. That's not going to be the compelling reason why somebody buys something. So I have my audience point to their prefrontal cortex and say, logic tells. Okay, you're going to do this with me. Logic tells. All right, now point to your limbic system. Emotion cells. All right, say it with me. Logic tells.
Logic tells.
Emotion tells. All right. And then I have them look at each other because, quite frankly, we look pretty funny. But that is what you want to do, particularly. You can take your hands down.
I just want to stay here the rest of the time. Like
Simon says you can put your fingers down now. But, friend and colleague Jeffrey Gitomer says, get your prospect to laugh. Laughter is tacit approval. And so when we can get that approval, when we can get that positive emotion linked with what we're trying to sell, and we're all in sales. I don't care if you have a product or a service. If you've ever had a child who you've negotiated a bedtime or a date where you were trying to negotiate where you were going to eat, you're selling your idea. And if you can get them to laugh, and that doesn't have to be, to your point again, that doesn't have to be even a verbal laugh, because humor is a whole brain activity. It's the prefrontal cortex, the limbic, and the occipital lobe. It's the whole enchilada. And sometimes we enjoy it just at wit. We may be thinking, oh, that's funny. But you would never be able to tell it from our face. But you get them to have that, even if it's an internal chuckle, and you're going to be leveraging what it is that you want to achieve, and you're more likely to get it.
And it's so funny because the same general idea. Someone, if you grew up in stand-up or you grew up in comedy or humor, everybody wants to run something by you, right?
Yeah.
And so if you talk to me and say something that's funny, I laugh very easily.
Mhm.
But if you say, hey, I got something funny I want you to hear, I'll go, okay, what is it? And all of a sudden now I'm at work.
Yes.
And I'm listening. I'm going, okay, where's the surprise coming?
Right.
Where are they going with this thing? I see a punchline. Is it the one? Yeah. And then it's the one. And then you could have one. If you surprise the crap out of me, I'll sit there with a very straight face and go, oh, that was really good. That's
Right.
as good as you get. But if you just talk to me, and that's why taking, and our friend Mike Davis wrote about this today on LinkedIn.
Davis.
See, here we go. We're plug-a-thon. It's like if I had a bad hair thing, I'd have a plug-a-thon. That's what we're doing today. And he talks about how you have to train as a speaker. And one of the ways that I think you should train, this is what I did when I started stand-up, is if you're the funny guy and you go, hey, can I try a joke out on you? Oh, Christ. That's what they're going to do after a while. But if I said this, hey, Karen, I heard this on the Tonight Show last night. Here's a couple of things I heard on the Tonight Show. You'll go, oh, really? And I'll throw a Tonight Show joke at you, but then I gave you 5 of mine right after it because you think they're from the Tonight Show. So you're weighing them against Jay Leno. And if I got you to laugh, which just dates me, at least I didn't say Johnny Carson, for God's sake. And if I got you to laugh, I knew it was good because it's comparing to a Tonight Show joke. But when you start, there's no place to practice. You have to do it in general conversation.
Yeah.
You have to create these, you have to practice being social. You have to practice being funny. You have to all these things to get ahead, because here's the thing: hiring, AI, all these copywriting, they're all coming from a machine now. And the biggest difference, one of the biggest things I saw today, is that the most marketable skills now are the skills that people ignored before, which are the soft skills, of which humor is one. But if you ever read the book Humor Seriously, Naomi Bagdonis and Jennifer Aker, plug city. Prefrontal cortex, limbic system, plug city.
There you go.
Yeah. But that's, you find out that the reason for these things have been there all along. And Jeffrey Gitomer used it all the time in his approach. He showed up with a little pig and unannounced because, oh, do you have an appointment? No, but just tell him Jeffrey and his pig are here to see him. And everybody comes out because the curiosity around the pig, the surprise that a pig brings in the office. And using that surprise, and here's how it doesn't even have to create laughter. If you sent a postcard to an office, a handwritten postcard, you know what you just sent to the office? The Rosetta Stone. It is that rare. And people, first of all, the receptionist, a young receptionist, can't read it because it's in cursive.
Yep.
So they bring it to an older person. Now you've got younger generation bonding with older generation. Win-win right there. And who's it addressed to? Well, let's bring it to him and see what they have to say about this. Or better yet, a handwritten card that's unopened. Because then what they do is they hold it up to the light to see if they can see through it, see what's in it. They shake it by the ear and go, I wonder what this is for. Well, it's for John. Let's go see it. And if you're a boss, take notes on this. Take it. They'll take it. And they'll go, oh my God, look at this. Can you read that? Yeah, it says it's for John. Okay. So 2 people are now going back to John's office and they're holding it. And a third person, what is that? I don't know. It's handwritten. We don't know what it is. It could be a bomb. Let's check it out. Let's give it to John. He'll open it. And And if you sent this card yourself to one of your employees and it says, just wanted to let you know what a great job you're doing. And they open that up in front of the other 5 or 6 employees that are there. They'll go, oh my God, I want to do something that's good enough where I get a postcard. And you've created a special moment that cost you, I don't even know what a card costs these days. Let's call it $5. I don't know. But I know.
Snail mail. No, I mean, it's a postcard, $1 at most. I mean.
Yeah, but what I just described, I started out with a post. This is the squirrel me. I started out with a postcard. I turned it into a handwritten card because handwritten card has mystery. But the postcard is just as good. That's $1. The post probably the same now. I still have forever stamps that I got. I still haven't used because I don't send those things anymore. I wonder if that would be a market. Cashing in forever stamps.
There you go.
Forever.
Well, and again, if it's a funny card that you got and that you're sending to one of your employees, that is an example of leveraging humor. You didn't have to come up with a with a copy on that. You didn't have to do the drawing or anything. You didn't have to be the funny person, but because you have sent the card that's funny, you're now being associated with a sense of humor. And whether you're a leader or whether you're a lover, sense of humor is one of the top 3 traits people are looking for. And you are going to be, it's going to be to your advantage to have them associate sense of humor with you.
It's the biggest secret sauce that you can have that gets you more second chances. It is instant rapport, likability, and trust. And people view it. You mentioned this earlier. I'm going to use our friend David Newman's phrase. Another plug, David Newman.
Another plug, David Newman.
He's got another book coming out too. But he calls it mastery in reserve. And if you can pull it out whenever you want, then it's kind of like the equivalent. You know, you ever go to one of those parties where people stand around and they try and one up each other?
Yeah.
And Brian Reagan is a very funny comedian. He has a bit about the guy who walked on the moon. One of the guys who walked on the moon. Because if you were in one of those parties where everybody's trying to one up each other, you just wait. Because nobody's going to top you. You know, they're like, oh yeah, I made this car out of my own bare hands. I did this, I did that. Yeah, okay. Oh yeah, that's great. Oh, wow, you were a Secret Service agent. That's great. That's wonderful. Yeah. Oh, what did I do? I walked on the moon. Done. Right? There's only been 10 of them.
Well, that's I suppose it'll work depending on how much they've been drinking.
Yeah, that's true. But that there's usually liquor at those events when they do that.
Yeah. Back to leveraging other people's humor or other kinds of humor. There's so many different ways you can do that. And in terms of what are the benefits for leaders? And this URL shows humor and coaching. Initially, I started this course for coaches, and the weird thing was when people would apply and I'd have conversations with them, I'd say, "What kind of coaching do you do?" "Oh, I'm not a coach. I'm a manager." I thought this would be a good communication skill. Next person I talked to, "What kind of coaching do you do?" "Oh, I'm not a coach. I'm a professor. I'm teaching English as a second language. But this looked like it would be a good skill, for me with my students." The next person I call or have a conversation with, "What kind of coaching do you do?" I'm a nurse, but I thought it would be good skills between me and my patients. And I'm thinking, are there any coaches in the world that need this? And eventually the coaches did come on. But the fact is that whether you're a coach, whether you're a leader, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a minister, whether you're a therapist, and again, anybody who listens for a living or who wants to learn how to leverage humor to their advantage, this is going to be the course for you. And so by learning how to leverage these skills, learning how to see funny, that's a piece that I started incorporating because I was working once with a gentleman, high ticket salesman out of Australia. He's selling seats at $5K a pop.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, "I want to be funnier." And I said, "Okay, I'll work with you." And he sends me video to look at. And I'm looking and it's like, he's funny. And his audience is throwing him great lines that could be used again. And when I chatted with him at our next session, I said, "Are you aware that you're already getting a lot of laughs from your audience?" He said, "No." And I said, "Are you aware of this line that this woman threw at you in one of the sessions that you could use again and either reference her or just steal it, just say it?" And he's like, "No." I went back and I showed him. And this is when I realized that people who don't have a polished or nourished sense of humor, even if you're handing them the funny lines, they don't know when to use them. They don't know how to use them. They're not aware of these opportunities, and they don't even recognize when they're successful.
Yeah. Well, and that's a speaker thing too. It's an everybody thing, because what happens is, and one of the key things to being an effective person in front of a group of people, which is what speakers are. Basically, if you move your mouth, part of your job, you're a speaker. Whether or not they're handing you a microphone to do it, or whether you're talking to a group of 3 people, you're a speaker. You need to understand these kind of things. If you're in your head thinking about what you need to say, you'll never notice what's going on in their shoes. And so when you speak, you need to get out of your head and into their shoes, and look at life as they do. I tell my salespeople all the time, don't sell with your wallet, sell with their wallet through their eyes.
Yeah.
Because whoever hires us has more money than us usually. And so they don't look at money the same way we do. And as things go on, your problems don't change, but the way you perceive the money does. So
Yeah.
there's a money part to this as well. I think the big elephant in the room with humor is people are afraid it's not appropriate.
Yes.
And a little bit tougher every single day.
Yes.
For those that don't understand how to use it.
Yes.
I still think, and this is maybe my lack of knowledge in the world today, but I still think I could pull off just about anything and get away with it, because of how you carry yourself and how you set it up. People are missing the little subtle nuances in there. Back in the day, I went as low as I could go, pushing a button on people because I wanted a reaction.
Yeah.
But if I knew something was really, really funny, but could push that button, I knew how to set it up where it didn't push the button. So I tell, like there's one particular joke that I'm thinking of. I told the first half of this whole set, and they're laughing pretty good. And I think, there's a really sick second half to this, but you guys are good people. I couldn't do that to you. Well, guess what happens when you do that? I just got permission to do it because the audience is going to go, "No, tell us, come on, tell us." And then instead of them turning on you when you say it, they pull back and they go, "Oh my God, he was right." But then the sound they make is like, "Oh," which is a reaction. The only reaction you don't want is no sound, because that's anger.
Can be, yeah, can be.
And surprise that is not benign produces anger.
Yeah, and that's when it's not benign.
That's the fine line right there. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I do hear from people frequently, "I'm afraid I'm going to cross the line. What if I offend somebody?" And over the 35 years, I have generally evolved into 7 competencies. And these apply somewhat when the purpose is entertainment, but not all of them. These apply especially when you want to use humor for influence and well-being. The first is, what's your rapport with that other person? Because the better your rapport, the greater the trust. The greater the trust, the riskier the humor can be. Mm-hmm. Context is the next one, because you and I know what works on stage or what works maybe at a happy hour isn't necessarily going to work in a boardroom. You have to be aware of your environment, your context. Authenticity. People trying too hard, trying to use humor that's not them or styles that aren't them. I'm all for stepping out of your comfort zone. I encourage you to do that, but you don't have to be somebody you're not. Fourth one is safety, and that's physical safety, if you're pranking, but psychological safety has become a big thing because so many of the nuances, a lot of humor, and particularly jokes, but a lot of humor, it is targeting somebody. It's at least something, but often somebody. And these can be perceived as aggressions or microaggressions. So and again, entertainment, not that big a deal. But when you're in a boardroom, this counts. This counts. I had an insurance salesman tell me the other day a joke that he told that usually kills, but he didn't really take in the nuance of the new president. And when he told that joke, he they didn't buy. They didn't buy. He was shocked. But as soon as he told me the joke, it was like, ooh, yeah, I can see why you crossed the line with that person, but it never occurred to him. Um, Emotional distance. And this has to do with the benign part that we've been talking about, because sometimes in the moment, it's not benign. It's scary. It's threatening. But as time passes and the safety comes in, and that sense of relief and emotional distance, now it's funny. So at the peak of a crisis, maybe not so funny. A little bit later, really funny. And then context and delivery, not context, content and delivery. And those are really important in performance. Those are really critical when you're doing entertainment. They're still important when you're using influence and well-being, but your bond, your context, your authenticity, your timing, your distance, content, and delivery, those seven can really help you. And during our time together, that's part of what we dig deep into.
And I've always looked at it to try and, take that down to a sentence or two. Some general things that are just good takeaways about humor is that if you look at the surprise and the benign part to it and the distance in between things, a good analogy of this, if you and I walk down the street and we have a reasonable expectation, we've known each other for years, a reasonable expectation where I would remain upright during that entire walk. Well, if I tripped and fall, and that's kind of who I am, I'm a little bit clumsy, right? If I trip and fall, all of a sudden you start to laugh. See, you started to smile right there. That'd be funny, right? And it is. But then if I got up and my arm was broken, it stops being funny right in that moment.
Yeah.
Once it's healed again, it's funny again. Remember that time you were walking down the street and tripped and broke your arm? You moron, right? And you can actually say that. You can't even say those words anymore, but in a personal conversation you could. But the difference that I always look at it is everybody loves to show and talk about their scars. Nobody does that with their open wounds. And so that's where you're talking about the distance in there.
Yeah.
So are the scars healed? That's the problem, because you don't know psychologically.
Yeah.
Is it too soon? There's one comedian I've worked with who is a fantastic comedian, got on stage the day of a plane crash in Denver. And his opening joke was, the good news is those people on that plane ride today got 745 feet on their frequent flyer mile program. And somebody asked him, why did you do that the day of that? And this is before like the wave of political correctness came in. And his reply was, well, I know if someone was affected by that crash, they're not going out to a comedy club the night of the crash. And that's a reasonable reply, I think.
Yeah.
And he pulled it off. But I've seen him talk about being scared to go on and do things in today. And so it's really the combination of actions, words, expressions, and emotions, internally and externally, are pieces of this humor part. So if you lead with fun, like a smile is instant acceptance, laughter is instant rapport, likability, and trust.
Yeah.
And so you can control a lot of that simply with your body before
Yeah.
you open your mouth. And so if I can create this kind of impish look that I've got something I got to get off my chest and tell you it's going to be good, that little look is enough to break down barriers that go up if you don't have that. So it's way more complicated than people. It's not more complicated than people think it is, because people think it's like this mystical trick, and it's not. It's just, if you could learn accounting, if you're an accountant right now, you could be funny.
Oh, yeah.
You could break
Bob
down.
Newhart. Bob Newhart was an accountant.
Yeah. Yep.
What a funny guy. I want to come back to something you were talking about, because I think this is something that's, well, it's fascinating to me. It might be interesting to you. The closer you are to tragedy and death, the darker your humor becomes. Typically, when we experience plane crashes, plane crashing into buildings, whatever, the fires, whatever it may be, we see this a lot in police, EMTs, healthcare professionals, etc. They use that dark humor, and many times the time span is much closer, but body fluids, death, dismemberment, and this dark humor is part of a relief mechanism. It's part of what builds camaraderie between them and their fellows who have also experienced this, and resilience. It helps to create some distance between them and what's horrific. And so it's interesting to me to see how people use dark humor. And I'm not opposed to dark humor. And when I work with hospitals, I tell them, don't squelch the dark humor. It's a coping mechanism, but make sure that they understand the context that they can share it in. They can share it with one another, and it will be a healthy coping mechanism. If they're sharing it in front of a patient or a family member or somebody outside of that context and circle, then it becomes damaging. But dark humor can be very healing as well.
There's two sides to that, I think. There are certain things that happen in life that are, I don't know if there'll ever be a point that I don't ever know if you could make something about what's the biggest one that I've seen, the Challenger. That whole thing, I haven't seen anybody do a successful Challenger humor stack, right?
Not a set, but there are jokes.
There are jokes,
Yeah.
but it's, that's.
And I'm not going to repeat them here because I don't want people, but you can DM me.
Yeah. The other side of that is that it helps other people understand that it's okay. So, for example, Paul Artale is a great speaker, and he's got I don't know what it is, but he's got like really short arms, and he has like 3 fingers on each hand. And he asked if you want to do stand-up, and I said, the first thing you have to do is you have to talk about what you got there, because everybody's going to wonder, and they can't listen to you if they're wondering.
Right.
And so his very first thing, he got up there and said, yeah, I love working with kids. I do all this stuff with kids. And I always open up with them, say, when you're riding the bus, when you're a kid and the bus driver tells you not to stick your hands out the window when you're driving, that happened to me twice. Okay? And so boom, now the room is comfortable.
Yeah.
There was a guy, Charles Crazy Legs Fonseca, in a wheelchair, would get up and he'd stay silent in front of the room until it got uncomfortable. And then he just said, don't you know it's not polite to stare at the handicapped? And then all of a sudden things are okay. And if you take the trauma that you're relating, because people are always like, one of my big pet peeves is when people pass away around you, that phrase, sorry for your loss. It's just something you say because you don't know what to say. If you really analyze it, you're not that sorry for the loss because you don't know what to say, and that's why you're sorry. And so I have a whole hang up over that. But if you talk about what goes through and you're okay with it, the world is worlding. Whatever it is you have, whatever disease you caught or things that you have or these kind of things, and I find that the amount of humor you can make out of that is dark, in some ways it's almost liberating for the other people. When I had my own cancer thing with prostate cancer, right? Well, to cure it, they took gold and they stuck it up there in my prostate right there. So I, of course, affectionately called the doctor Dr. Goldfinger, and so that's and every time I met her, we talk about she goes, really, you're really hung up on that gold. I go, yeah, my net worth is up since I met you, and if you show that you're okay with it, then other people feel comfortable. So there's a way to use dark humor. And I think that's what cops and nurses, you work with a lot of nurses, and they've gone through hell the last few years. And if you don't let the steam off somewhere, and it's going to come out darker, because everybody I know that's involved with tragedy also has a sick side to their humor.
Right. It's very close, tragedy and death. And we see it, whether it's the shuttle Challenger, whether it's, there were jokes about O.J. Simpson. There was jokes back about Auschwitz. I mean, it's
oh yeah,
those jokes are present. One of the things that you mentioned that I think is worth coming back to, and that is that with certain kinds of humor and jokes, particularly the jokes that you were talking about with those, individuals who had anomalies and things, is that they can initiate that humor. They can say that about themselves. You can't, especially if you're trying to influence their well-being, you can't initiate that humor about them and say that. Now, once they open that door and invite you, if they invite you to participate in that humor, then it's okay. But it wouldn't be you that was saying, yeah, I bet you stuck your hand out the window, whatever. Not,
yeah.
If you get what I mean.
Well, a perfect example, I can walk up behind any bald-headed guy in the world, and I will say something while they cannot see me. Oh, there's a guy with the best looking hairdo in the building. And they all turn around with this look like, who the heck is doing? Oh, hey, buddy. And it's like instant change right there. And if a guy with full head of hair said that, wouldn't be the same reaction.
One of the things that I've just, again, shake my head sometimes. I was at a meeting and, I'm out at the rounds, and there was somebody with your particular hairstyle sitting there, and a woman went by and rubbed his head and said, wow, that's shiny. And I thought, you wouldn't be happy if he then turned around and patted your butt and say, wow, that's huge. It's like, again, unless you've been invited to participate in that kind of humor, I'm often really astounded at the things. Now, if they were best buddies, again, now you've got that rapport, you've got that trust. Teasing back and forth can be a very effective way of using humor. But if you don't have that trust and you don't have that bond, and people often tell me, oh, I love sarcasm. I love sarcasm too. But people don't know the root word of sarcasm means to tear the flesh. And it's great kind of humor when you have that rapport and you have that trust, because now it's seen as verbal banter, almost like, having a jousting match or something. But if it's somebody that you don't know and you're using sarcasm with them, that's really an aggressive kind of humor. That's a put down humor. And if you are in a position of power, I don't recommend that.
It's also the self-deprecation is a very dangerous form of humor as well. it can be used brilliantly as long as you put yourself down with no burn. So, and an example, I saw a clip talk about Jamie Foxx's ability to do this, and he was on a it's like Jimmy Kimmel or something like that, and he was talking about Draymond Green was in the back, and he said, man, I went back there. He's like, oh, Draymond, and he's a massive man. He's like he like picked me up and said, hey, Jimmy, it's good to be on the show with you right there. Now, there's nothing that's self-deprecation. He's smaller, but there's nothing wrong about being smaller than an NBA superstar.
Right.
And when he also talked, he was comparing himself to this buff dude, and he's pretty and Jamie Foxx he goes, yeah, but yours is natural from work. Mine is like, and he pulled on his shirt and he snapped it back. He goes, mine is Spanx. So he was wearing like a Spanx thing. And then and later on he said, yeah, but the thing about me is, I'm all up here. I don't work the low, my lower half is small. Well, no, I didn't mean that, but it's like the my lower half is tiny. Like I could beat you up, but I couldn't chase you. So he's saying, yeah, I'm buff, but my legs aren't as thick as there's nothing bad about what he's saying, but it is a self-deprecation that brings out something good. It promotes a positive. And if you can do that, then you can use it. Otherwise, I use it right when I start talking, because I'll put everything that is braggy about me in the introduction. And so when they say that and I come out and say, wow, that guy sounds great. No pressure on me now, and that just creates, he's normal, right? And then, but after that, then when you're talking, you are the expert or you're the entertainer or whatever it is you are, but you don't, and Chris McGuire said this the other day, he was talking about self-deprecation. You don't put down
Chris McGuire.
Yeah. You don't put down your expertise.
So here's my take on self-deprecating humor. I'm a fan, and I do think that aside from entertainment, in the fields of influence and well-being, I think a little self-deprecating humor can be really powerful, because at a non-conscious or unconscious level, it's showing people that it is safe to be with you, because you do have, you're not perfect. You have some flaws. The caveat that I teach people is to make fun of your actions and not of who you are, because you want people to think you made a mistake, not that you are a mistake. Yeah. And so if you can master that, now you can really use self-deprecating humor to your advantage.
Yeah, it's to me, for most people, I always steer them away from it, because it is probably the hardest of all the parts of comedy to understand how to use effectively. So unless it's in a well-trained professional's hand, I wouldn't roll the dice on it if I was just an average person doing something.
Not if you were trying to entertain, but in terms of influence and well-being, again, now we have a different set of rules. So I would ponder that. I see it used effectively by leaders all the time. And
yes.
Again, because humor increases the hierarchy sometimes, but with a little self-deprecating humor, now you've lowered the hierarchy and people are going to be more likely to connect with you on that level.
I've seen it backfire too many times in my lifetime to endorse it. I know I can use it, and I know a bunch of people can use it, and it can be effective. And I would love to work somebody through that, but I would not say, oh yeah, this is go for it. This is where that's the part where you're playing with fire. Mm. And it's like, well, now we can get in the whole handgun argument. It's like, I think anybody can have a handgun as well. Just don't point it at me. It's not, and it's because it's the handgun in the wrong hand kills things. Mm-hmm. And the right thing does good things.
Yeah.
So it's something that I get what you're saying. I'm not sure I would recommend it to anybody. I use it all the time. But
Yeah.
I don't do it. I don't do it if I'm speaking publicly. As a boss, I will poke fun at something dumb I did to make me human, but I'll never text it. I'll never send it in an email, because that's you're just asking for unsuccess.
Yeah.
But we got to wrap this thing up. It's just flown by again, Karen.
I'm
Look at us
telling
go.
you, when you and I get together. Boop, 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 boop,
Yeah.
boop.
And please go to our website, KarenBuxman.com. Play around on there. Go to the human coaching thing. The class starts on the 22nd. It's a master class. Unbelievable wisdom. You'll find out the science behind why things work. It's an amazing, cool thing to do, and I highly recommend it. There's only a few seats left, so grab them up quick and tell them that Ray sent you, and you'll get a free bucket of Kentucky Fried Chicken somewhere.
Woo, yum.
Got to figure out how that works. All right, everybody, we'll see you next week. We got a great guest coming on next week, hopefully. And I know I do have somebody scheduled. I believe it is, I don't know. I'll post who it is. I know the 28th is Lisa Rothstein, and a bunch of, it's all jam packed up there. But we were lucky to have Karen Buxman here. Thank you so much, Karen. We'll see you next time. Everybody, keep going, keep smiling, keep laughing.